Do you want to bust your sales quota? Do you want to join the ranks of top 1% sellers? The Top 1% Sellers podcast gives you the insights and the tools to help you achieve your sales greatness. The podcast features sales and services professionals, leaders, and experts to give you the edge you're looking for. Here's your host, Ash Seddeek.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Top 1% Sellers podcast. Our guest today is Lawrence Shaw from Maverik Consulting. I will actually give him an opportunity to tell you more about what he does. I also want to share with you the fact that I'm also starting to talk to a secondary audience, which are basically entrepreneurs that we're helping them launch their businesses. We basically see the sales skill and the sales function really in the hands of the sales professional, whether that's a man or woman, and also any business owner is the chief sales officer for their own company. With that, Lawrence, I would love for you to kind of give people a sense of what you do for your clients and maybe also how you started thinking, I need to launch my own company and there's something that I'm passionate about that I want to do.
Well, outstanding. Well, thank you, Ash. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a delight to be here. And as a fellow entrepreneur, there's so many different things that we can share with our viewing audience. And let's get started. So I started out about 5 years ago. I was working in industry. I was leading up an internal consulting practice for a financial services company. And as such, with financial services and internal consulting, you can work in a myriad of different areas. Yes. And that was great because I led teams and all over the enterprise. But ironically, one of the projects I worked on was a project where we were reorganizing. And many of the ideas that I had in terms of what we needed to do to thrive for the next 5 to 7 years, really worked myself out of a job. But that was okay, because I saw the writing on the wall, and more importantly, the writing in my heart to want to go out and do the types of work that I do independently. So 5 years ago, I left industry and started my own consulting practice, and here we are today.
That's amazing, and that's typically a tough decision. I can empathize with that. How long did it take you sort of internally while you were still working in the corporate job to start thinking that the time is coming and that you wanted to do this move?
I would say, it's probably been sort of flying in and out of my head for a number of years, or had been, but I would say a full 9 months leading up to the point where, I made the clean break and said, all right, there's no safety net now. It's time to jump in.
Exactly. That's wonderful. And I was actually curious. I realized your business name is called Maverik, and I wondered what was the inspiration behind choosing a term that basically says sort of going off of the rules of business and perhaps doing something completely different.
Yeah, that's a good question, Ash. It's a really good question. There's probably several answers to that, but the reality is I've always admired game changers, whether they're in industry or people that I've worked with, people who are willing to, we hear the term disrupt a lot today, disruptive technology, disruptive ideas. I like game changing better. I like those who are willing to challenge the status quo. Yeah. And Mavericks do that. Mavericks are willing to do that. They know how to play the team game, but they're not willing just to go along with the herd. They're willing to lead the charge. They're willing to inspire others to go out there and do different things, and really are in accord with helping an organization thrive. And that's what I wanted to do.
Fantastic. So, it's a fantastic segue, because it resonates with me, and it resonates with a lot of sales professionals and entrepreneurs, this whole concept of really going against the conventional line of thought. And with that in mind, I think one of the key things that we want to cover for everybody today is, as they approach their own clients and they are trying to bring them some new and fresh ideas, game-changing ideas. I think you hear the word transformation all over the place, whether when I was at Cisco or Oracle or any other company, or even Deloitte, everybody says, this company is going through a transformation, or we want to go and suggest a transformational initiative for the business that can take the business to the next stage. And I would love to then for us to think about as you, that individual, whether you're selling or you're wearing a hat of a consultant or you're a salesperson, you're still coming to the table with the idea that you've got something new and different for this client. How do you typically bear that in mind and then prepare to have that conversation with the client? What sort of homework do you do in order to come and say, I've got something that's completely unconventional and could be transformational?
Well, that's a loaded question,
Yeah.
Ash. There's no question, but I think there's some basics there that you have to start with. I think you identified at the very outset the key importance of being what I would call client-centric.
Yes.
If you have to understand the business goals, the business problems that your clients are facing on a day-to-day basis. If you can't solve business problems for them, you're not delivering value.
Yes.
And you have to be innovative, you have to be creative, you have to be a great listener, you have to be a good questioner, if you will, interviewer. You have to be astute enough and agile enough to be able to think quickly on your feet. And you're always looking for opportunities to help your clients solve problems, look at things from a different angle, and provide solutions that they otherwise may not have come up with themselves. Because let's face it, organizations have lots of talented people.
Yes.
The only value a consultant can bring is if they can bring something to the party that allows the organization to rise further, stretch further, go deeper, and perform better than they would otherwise with their own people alone.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of the time you hear people saying, you need to be a strategic thinker. And if you say that to a salesperson and you're basically telling them they are not being strategic, at least in your mind, what does that mean in terms of unpacking what that means? And then what's the reverse? How could they do and think strategically? What would that look like essentially?
So what would it look like if I told my client that they're not thinking strategically?
No. Actually, when you're talking, let's say a sales professional, he hears that comment from their boss, right? That they're not thinking strategically about the client.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you just shared was, the fundamental step would be to understand the problems they have today, right?
Right.
And then there's the bigger picture then. How do we get them to look, or at least when you try to look strategically at your client situation, what are some of the things that you do to get that picture?
Yeah, I think any good assessment when you're going in and understanding a client, you try to understand their business, try to understand who their customer base is. Because let's face it, business in its basic sense is you're serving clients. You don't have clients, you don't have a business. Exactly. So I often ask my clients, who are their clients? Who are they selling to? Who are they successful with? What are the challenges they have? What's the feedback that they have? You hear about, I talk a lot about three different voices. Voices of the customer, the voices of your processes, which really are the types of things that enable you to deliver value. And then the voice of your employees, your staff, even your, to a certain extent, it's even your service partners, your valued service partners that you're working with.
Yeah,
but I think you have to get that input. The voice of the customer, voice of the client's key. So you have to know how to probe and ask those questions. Some people are willing to, they're an open book. They're going to share that with you. Sometimes you've got to you've got to do preparation to know what questions you need to ask.
Yes.
And that might be going out and researching, doing a D&B on a company, going out and reading on the internet. Internet's a great equalizer. Go find information about the company so that you come prepared to ask questions. Hey, you made a good acquisition here. How is that transition going? Or you're heading into these types of markets. Tell me about some of the benefits in those markets. What are some of the challenges you're having? Whatever it may be.
Absolutely. That's wonderful, Lawrence. We'll pause here for a second, and then we'll come back and delve actually into the WINSHAW methodology. I'd love our audience to learn, what inspired it and also what it actually entails.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. So Lawrence, you were going to tell us about, what inspired you to create WINSHAW methodology And also, you are now just about to show it to us, so we're definitely very excited about this.
Sure, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, 5 years ago when I jumped out into consulting, I was doing, my first client out of the box was AT&T. Yes. That's a great thing to have because it was a stable, large account where I had a chance to really make a mark. And I helped them create, or for one of their divisions, I helped them create a continuous improvement, process improvement, performance improvement culture, if you will. And I stay away from programs because statistically we know programs fail. But if you're creating a mindset and a change and a thought towards solving business problems, that was the ideal that I had coming in with, and that's why they hired me. But along the way, Ash, a funny thing happened. I was facilitating strategic planning sessions for one of their groups, and I noticed that it was a chaotic experience. So I pulled out an Excel spreadsheet at the time, yes, and started facilitating, if you will, yes, the discussions with a disparate group of people, if you will, that came together that had all sorts of different ideas, but didn't know how to really navigate that process for effectiveness or efficiency or even inclusion to get people involved in the team decision making. So I created a little bit of a matrix, kind of based on the Pew matrix, if you will, from the 1920s. Well, a funny thing happened. One of their leaders came out and said, "Hey, I really like what you did here." And what was fascinating is it was really clunky, Ash. It was really clunky. And at that point, the light bulb went off for me. Boy, we're really so many teams struggle with collaborative decision making. Yes. Especially when they get down to the point where they have to make evaluations. If I have to choose between candidates or programs that we need to appropriate funding to, or picking a new product. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Yes. But those are challenging. That's a challenging thing to do.
Absolutely. And that's typically, I mean, for a sales professional, that's what's happening at the customer organization. So I think this is very insightful because it tells them what's happening on the other end. When it's high stakes, millions of dollars at stake, then they have to decide very collaboratively. And that's a process you step in and facilitate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's all sorts of process tools out there. There's all sorts of program management tools. You can shake a stick at them all out there. But what I found is that there aren't a lot of really good solutions to facilitate teams through that process. And it's chaotic. Yes. So the first thing I had to take a look at, I looked at sort of a lean startup approach to this whole thing. Yes. I experienced it myself through the facilitation of strategic planning. Yes. But I wondered, okay, how big of a problem is this? If this organization's struggling with this, how many others struggle with it? Absolutely. And what's the research that's out there? So I did two things. I went out and took a look at research, and I was blown away, Ash. I was blown away that McKinsey did a study a couple years ago, at the very end of 2015. Yes. 75% of decision-making processes fail.
Interesting.
I mean, when that number hit me, I thought about all the waste, the cost, the human capital, the bad decisions that are made. And then I started looking into this and I thought, well, what's the cost of a bad decision? If that's true, and there's all sorts of other data that's in there, well, what's the cost to a company? Well, there's research out there that'll show just one bad hire. Yeah. Let's take an even salary of $100,000 can cost you $250,000 to $500,000 in hard and soft dollar costs. Yeah. Same thing for a new product or choosing a new location where to put a business, you know, a satellite business or what have you. Yes. All sorts of stuff that's out there.
It brings to my mind that when someone is selling, he or she is not really selling, he's helping the client buy.
Yes.
Which brings the whole idea of the decision making behind it. And if you can help them in that process, then it's not really selling. You're really becoming more of a consultant who's helping them get to the destination they're looking for.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
Because consultants are selling their services. They're solving business problems, but they're helping their clients navigate that uncharted territory. A lot of people come up and they'll say, oh yeah, we know what to do. But then when you really get down to it, it takes some skill to facilitate and to understand where you're headed. You know, for example, I'll tell you something. In developing the WINSHAW, one of the challenges and the fundamental keys that I had in developing this was, if you don't know where you're headed, then any path is going to get you there.
Yeah.
So in the development of the tool, I wanted it to be simple, elegant, and the WINSHAW actually is both a product and a service. Because if you think about that from a product standpoint, it's a solution, a web-based, cloud-based solution that ultimately is a tool that helps teams facilitate that chaotic process.
Yes.
But the services are being able to deploy that with teams and bringing expertise, facilitative expertise to the table to help clients do that. Whether I'm helping them facilitate a decision, where they want to bring in a third party, which there's lots of research that says bring in an expert facilitator. So there's a service. But also more so is, can I teach? Can I provide a service that allows your people to become expert facilitators so you're not dependent upon me?
Yes.
There's a line from a movie I remember watching with my kids, Ash, Nanny McPhee.
Yes.
And she had a line in that movie where she said, when you need me but do not want me, I must stay.
Yes.
But when you want me and no longer need me, I must go.
Interesting.
And that mindset is my mindset in consulting and selling services. I want to help you get better. I don't want you to become dependent upon me.
Yes. That's very, very opportune that you bring that, because again, particularly also sort of the technology industry is moving towards, a SaaS model or X as a service. Mm-hmm. And we even see businesses that are not in the technology world are trying to think about that model and adopt for their businesses, so that a lot of services and a lot of products are now becoming more and more a subscription-based service.
Yes. And
which really kind of brings us back to your world, which is very services focused, a lot of focus on customer success and so on. I'd love for you, because this is really fantastic, I'd love for people to kind of see what are the thought buckets that you have in the WINSHAW matrix, and then typically how do you work with your clients? Because I'd like a sales professional to listen to you talk about this and say, you know what, I can follow some of the footsteps that Lawrence goes through because it's going to benefit the decision-making process. So, let's take our time and maybe kind of start at the top. What are the big buckets, and then how do you use it as a consultative process tool with clients?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I guess the best way to do that is through demonstrations. They say a picture says 1,000 words. So as long as you can see the pictures on my screen, then I can talk to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. Great. Let me make this a little bit smaller. All right, so you mentioned a subscription-based service. So the landing page that you're looking at right now is the WINSHAW, and this is the collaborative decision-making tool that is commercially being used right now.
Yeah.
So very simply, I wanted to have a streamlined process that allowed team members a safe way of giving input to a team decision.
Yes.
Interestingly, Ash, I wanted to say something just as an excerpt right now.
Sure, go ahead.
Surveys show that 92% of employees want to be involved in team meetings, even though they know most of them are wasteful. And you know why they want to do that? It's because they want to make a difference. They want to be part of the decision-making process. They believe they have valuable input, and they want to be treated as such.
Yes.
But if 92% of them want that, and yet most of the time meetings are a waste and 75% of decision-making processes fail, I knew that there needed to be a better way of getting that input, building that culture, and coming up with better, faster, wiser decisions that stick. So that's what the WINSHAW does. So essentially, I'm going to go out and let's take a basic decision, which would be, let's prioritize our strategic initiatives. So executives say, we've got a host of different ideas out there. We need to decide which ones are the ones we're going to be involved in.
Yes.
So the first thing that I get people to realize is that we want to get them focused in on what's important to them. So this 5-step process really simply is I'm going to get them focused in on defining the criteria that are important to your decision.
Yes.
What's important to solving the business problem? People are going to come in with their own ideas of this solution, this idea, this project. People have biases.
Yes.
That's fine and well. We'll evaluate those, but we need to have a common way by which we will evaluate those alternatives.
Yes.
Because if we don't do that, if we don't know what we're evaluating against, then again, any path is going to get us there, and that's where it'll devolve into chaos. So I get to focus in on criteria as the first thing.
Okay.
So in this particular case, take a look at some of the things that might be germane to evaluating strategic initiatives.
Yes, and I think for our listeners, here you're focusing on prioritizing strategic initiatives. In another situation, it could be, buying a $25 million deal from HP or Cisco or Wall Street.
Absolutely. I'm comparing my potential vendors,
yes,
vendor
exactly.
selection, or ideas or products. Exactly. I mean, anytime you're evaluating multiple alternatives against criteria that's important to you, you'd use the WINSHAW.
Absolutely. And you want to make it collaboratively so that the decision is bought in by others and there's alignment.
Oh, absolutely. Reaching that alignment, that minimum level of understanding, I often say,
yes,
is critical. And you can't do that unless you have clearly identified criteria and operational definitions that people know. Yes. For example, you'll notice I have a list of them over here. Time to complete. Okay, well, how do we define time to complete? Yes. Well, everybody has to have the common understanding of what does that mean. Well, in this particular case, the team defined them in months.
Yes.
So if I'm going to evaluate an alternative on its ability to meet a certain time to complete, well, a high score of that alternative would be we can get it done quickly. And what does quickly mean? 1 to 3 months. Well, any project that's going to take over 7 months, conversely, would have a low score for its ability to get done quickly.
Absolutely, and you get to really uncover a lot of the what everybody's assumptions are, and then once they are out in the open, you bring then some order to them and make sure that there are no disagreements within these assumptions.
Absolutely. Again, that minimum level of understanding. Ash, you're spot on. I mean, that's so much part of the problem. And think about your own experiences. And I would invite all the listeners to think about their own experiences, either being part of a team meeting where you're evaluating alternatives, or if you've been leading one.
Yes.
You can't keep it straight in your head. Exactly. Sure. I mean, I have a saying that says, use the tools, don't let the tools use you. If you have a couple things that are important to you and you can make an executive decision, you're not going to use the WINSHAW. You just go and make it. It's not that hard. But if you're trying to keep straight on 5 alternatives against, 6 criteria or 3 and 3, whatever that might be,
yes,
research shows you can't keep it straight in your head. It's crazy. It's much less getting the input of 7 to 10 people.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
So that's the first thing we try to do, is walk them through, name the criteria. And once we do that, the next step in the process with this is realizing that not all criteria are created equal. So essentially what we'll do with the teams is we'll get them to think about, relative to each other, how important is each criteria. So as you can see here, the visual depiction of each of these relative weightings can be seen, sort of like a stereo equalizer, going back to the days when people actually listened to stereo systems and had an equalizer.
Yeah.
But you can move them along the spectrum like this and change them any which way you want. But that visual setting is really helpful for teams.
Yeah.
So the heavy lifting, believe it or not, we've spoken for maybe a couple minutes on.
Yes.
The heavy lifting's already been done. We've named what's important. We've weighted them.
Yes.
Now we layer on top the alternatives where people really understand, what are the projects we're going to be evaluating?
Yes.
So we're going to list them down there.
Yes. And that's a fantastic piece and step, because in most organizations, again, we're talking about high stakes selling or high stakes decisions. It's definitely always a portfolio view from the client's point of view, where they have several initiatives. They're not just looking at buying something from one company. They could be doing, what if we do nothing? What if we do something internally? What if we put it off? So there are so many different alternatives for them. And it's a strategic skill for the sales professional to realize that that's what the client's world is like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a learning process, and you have to be ready to learn at all times.
Yes, exactly.
So we're building this along the way, and hopefully you're getting a sense, Ash, and hopefully the listeners are too, of being able to facilitate a structure, give structure that allows out of the box thinking.
Yes.
So once we layer on top the alternatives and we have a means to evaluate them, knowing the criteria and the weightings, then we go out and we select the team members from whom we want to get input. And this brings me to a really important dynamic.
Yes.
And I would ask the question, how many times have you seen dynamics in team meetings where you've got introverts and extroverts? You've got left-brained people, right-brained people.
Yes.
You've got the boss that's in the room, and there's a whole bunch of junior associates that might be there, and they're afraid to speak their mind because the boss is real demonstrative in what he or she wants.
Yes.
There's all sorts of dynamics at play.
Absolutely. I want to share something here because what you're showing on the screen is a very, very powerful tool for sales professionals. And the reason why I say that is that they can use this tool in a very consultative way to tell the client that in order for us to do what we need to do, we'd love to see who has to bear on the decision. And that will help a lot of these sellers really eliminate the surprise, as you're saying, that there's someone who has the final decision and they don't uncover that person until very late in the game. And then they are totally surprised and the deal is lost because they haven't found out the real decision maker early on in the process. Whereas here, it can be done very, very sort of like subtly. We're really just trying to find out who needs to be part of the decision making. And then hopefully they give you all the names and there are no surprises at the end of the day.
That's right.
It's phenomenal for people to use. If
Absolutely.
you're thinking it that way. So
it's truly collaborative. I mean, it allows you to get the input. I mean, the value here is innumerable, but you're getting that input from your subject matter experts that matter. Exactly. And you're uncovering, and you have the ability to go in and see that. The boss might ultimately have the final say, yes, but a good leader is going to want to understand different aspects, different viewpoints of things.
And you can also say, do we have everybody? Is there anybody that we're missing? How about the budget piece? Is the budget piece covered here? Do we have the CFO or maybe a proxy decision maker within the group? So it's a beautiful tool to really make sure that you've got the SMEs, those who have the money, the influencers.
Yep.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you get everybody there. And what's nice about it is you give them the opportunity to evaluate each of the alternatives against the weighted criteria with anonymity.
Yes.
In the safety and privacy of their own office, their own workspace, whatever that might be. Yes. Now, you can facilitate it in a host of different ways. I've facilitated this with teams where, we've got performing teams. They've been together. They feel comfortable sharing their ideas. They feel comfortable actually debating one another.
Yes.
Which is fine. We've actually gone and done live voting where people have just gone and we've taken 10 minutes. Everybody puts the evaluation out there, and then we come back and look at the results and discuss the results. But the fact of the matter is, it allows you the ability to do that.
Fantastic.
So, and then finally, the last step of this is really simple. It's go take a survey, go evaluate it. So you're gonna end up voting. Now, what I can do is kind of show you what that process looks like for the user.
Yes.
Let's say I'm a team member and I'm going to evaluate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what I'd love to do is I'd like to let everybody who's listening in, listen to segment 3. So we're going to pause here and get into segment 3 in a few seconds.
Sounds good.
Wonderful, Lawrence. So now we are in our last portion here of this discussion, and I love the fact that now you're showing people how the tool can be used by every decision maker. And as part of this segment, I'd like us to provide more details on the different formats that you yourself and your company would engage with clients, how you can go through the decision-making process by using the tool, and perhaps maybe in other formats. I'd love for you to kind of unpack how each one of those formats might actually show up in real life.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the key thing is when I'm working with a client is to understand, first of all, they have to come to the self-awareness that they and their teams do have a struggle with being able to strategically prioritize, yes, to hire candidates, to choose vendors, to pick the right, in program management, deciding which programs to decide, solution sets for projects that are out there. How do we decide among them? So these are all types of examples.
Yes.
But really, an executive has the opportunity. You want to get the executives to understand. So Ash, there's a host of different ways that you can use the WINSHAW. And what you're seeing on screen right now is a depiction of what it would be like for a team member once we've actually identified the criteria that's important, we've weighted it, we've layered on top the alternatives that we're going to evaluate, and I've now been, as a team member, been chosen to give my input. Well, the scoring looks like this. The scoring takes me through the opportunity to online evaluate each of the alternatives against each of the criteria, but we're doing it in an orderly manner.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it. I don't have to think about time to complete and return on investment and savings and disruption to the organization all at once.
Yes.
All I'm asking is to evaluate each of the alternatives against time to complete as we've defined it here, and everything is laid out for you.
Yes.
So you see the scale there. So what the user will do is they'll just go through, and again, I'm just going to fictitiously pick a few things here.
Fantastic. And for those listening on the audio channel on iTunes or the C-Suite Radio, would very much encourage you to also check us out on YouTube, because you'll be able to watch some of the work that Lawrence is showing us on the screen as well.
And for those of you who are listening, again, if you probably couldn't hear my click, all I was doing is basically taking a survey, which we've taken so many surveys, SurveyMonkey or any type of online survey where you pick radio buttons. That's essentially what the user experience is doing. But again, you're removing that chaos. I don't have to keep everything straight in my head. Or I don't have to go up back to the whiteboard or do fist of five or do sticky notes or lose a lot of information that's been maybe thrown out there in discussion but has never been captured.
Yes. And I think this is also very helpful for distributed organizations where the decision makers are in different geographic locations around the globe, but you want to give them a real sense in this case, that they are participating in these very critical decisions and they are being part of the decision-making process without having to spend thousands of dollars bringing them together in one location.
That's a great point, Ash. I'm glad you brought that up, because it allows that. I mean, think about the cost of having to bring everybody together in one room.
Exactly.
You don't have to. You use this to facilitate it, and I do that with clients.
Yeah, and I can definitely see organizations like, when I was at Cisco, we're using telepresence to conduct company meetings. And we were really kind of bringing people from different places all on the same stream. In this situation, you can come up with a way where you can broadcast video, you can talk to them about the initiative, the decisions that are at stake, and the fact that you're going to deploy the WINSHAW tool to enable everybody to participate on that decision and have a bearing on the final decision that they end up deciding. Absolutely.
You think about what that does to the morale of an organization. If somebody values my input, I'm going to want to stay on board with that organization. I'm going to want to contribute. We talk about discretionary effort. You hear that term in industry. How do you get discretionary effort from your associates, from your employees? Well, you do that by making them feel like they're an integral part of the organization. Now, that's not to say that every decision has to be made by everybody. I'm not advocating that. That doesn't make sense. But in today's environment, there's more and more opportunities to make collaborative decisions. This is a way to facilitate that. And it just, we don't even capture the benefits that much on the organization in terms of what does that do for morale? What does that do for building a cohesive team that really knows what they want to do?
Absolutely. This brings me to your point, talking about discretionary effort and the whole employee engagement component and how billions of dollars are lost, to your point, when employees feel detached, disengaged. This tool really brings engagement to a whole other level, because you're having them be part of very critical decisions, so that the engagement and the commitment afterwards and the capture of the benefits is much more realizable by the organization than otherwise.
Absolutely. In fact, for those who are watching, that's a great segue. I should actually show you the capturing of the benefits and what you can do. And for those of you who are in the listening audience, I'll try to describe the clicks as best I can. Yes. So at the end of the day, let's say we've built the objective. We know we've made the decisions. We haven't made the decision, but the people have evaluated the alternatives against the weighted criteria, and we have all the results from all the different inputs. Well, you got to report out. Your stakeholders, your leadership, they're waiting to see what happened. Well, the beautiful thing about it right now is the WINSHAW allows you really simple visuals to show you the results. And two things really come out of this. Number one is it allows you to justify your rationale in a very simplistic way. And what do I mean by that? Well, it allows me the opportunity to show the stakeholders these are the criteria that we used. These are the results. These are the alternatives we evaluated, and this is what came out on top. And what you're looking at right now is what I call the winner's podium. We had 7 ideas to evaluate. Our top 3, gold, silver, bronze, just like the Olympics, come out on top. So you can see that.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing that you can actually do is it's dynamic. So let's say I'm reporting out and I'm showing my results. I can actually go to the leadership and say, this is how the team evaluated the weighting of each of the criteria. These are the results. But let's say, for argument's sake, you want to change the weighting value of a particular criteria. Let's say expense reduction, real life scenario.
Yes.
Guess what, guys? About a month ago when we did this, we got everything together. We lost a couple accounts. We probably need to be looking at tightening our belts a little bit. Well, let's take a look at expense reduction. You weighted that low. What if it's high? I can move that to a higher position, and you can see how it changes the results. So it's dynamic. It's a sensitivity analysis. That's what it is.
Yeah. Because to your point, maybe company dynamics, market dynamics may change, and then you might need to be able to adapt to that. And as long as you go back and communicate to that community why the shift in the decision, then at least you're doing the homework of being very transparent with that communication.
That's right. Transparency and the justification is there. Many teams have to justify their decisions. They need to give a rationale. I've been in numerous meetings where a decision was made and the rationale for that decision was unclear at best.
Yes.
Even if it was communicated. Yes. Here it removes all that. It's transparent. You see the criteria that we use. You see the weightings. You see the results. And if that's not good enough, you can actually play with that a little bit to say, well, if we change that around a little bit, how would that change the results?
Yes. And I want to talk to the sales professional listening in, because I think this is a fantastic sales tool, because the beauty of it is that it's going to help that sales professional really help the clients walk down the path of making a high stakes decision and engaging everybody in the decision-making process, so that you really get to that close of that deal very successfully. Because a lot of the time sales professionals will be working and will basically, go to their boss and say, here is the projection for this deal. We think it's going to close 70% potential that it's going to close. And then other things pop up on that deal, and all of a sudden, the chances of it closing are probably 25%. What this tool provides the sales professional, at least even the thought process, and I would love people to kind of reach out to you, Lawrence, because there is definitely a benefit here for high stakes, complex sales, where a lot of divisions in the customer organizations are part of the decision-making process. The stakeholder community that's going to be impacted by that purchase are many. And the tool here steps into this whole process. And instead of that process taking 9 months to get a global sales deal to happen, it can happen within 30 to 60 days. Once you identify, to your point, what the criteria are, what the alternatives are, who needs to be based on the decision making, and then you get them to score, and then you bring the results back in. As a sales professional, you're really managing the process very consultatively, and it doesn't look like you're selling.
You're absolutely right. We said at the outset of the program, we're solving business problems.
Exactly.
And that's what you're doing. I mean, great salespeople solve business problems for their clients, for their customers. That's it in a nutshell. And Ash, you touched on something that. Ash, you touched on something that piqued my interest, and that was you alluded to being the time to benefit. Yes. And I'm paraphrasing from what you've really said. Yes. This is a big time saver.
Absolutely.
Because if you're able to reduce the time to make the decision, and you feel better about that decision because you've been more inclusive, you've been more thorough, what's important to you, you get that all in the open, you coordinate it all in one concise place, which is the WINSHAW. Yes. Now you can reduce that time. You can reap benefits so much faster. I'll give you a personal story, and it has to do with when I was testing this out. A friend of mine was evaluating 4 really good opportunities, executive opportunities, and each of them required a move. Actually, one of them didn't, but they were going to likely require a move. Yes. Well, we went through and we used the WINSHAW to capture what was important to him in that decision. And in the process of, again, this was looking in arrears, but in about a half an hour, 40 minutes, we built the whole thing, had some good discussion about things, and then we paused for a few minutes, allowed him to go out and evaluate things, and we looked at the results. And a funny thing happened. He said, what was great? The results actually validated the decision he made, but here was the kicker. He said, if I had this tool, you would have saved me endless sleepless nights and weeks and weeks and weeks
yes.
of deliberation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is
and that's not to say, there's no easy button. You got to put work in. I'm not here to say that, the WINSHAW is going to solve all your problems. It's not. You have to come and have a good understanding of how to vet alternatives. You have to be able to define criteria, and you have to have a way to facilitate and extract the good thought processes, the good opinions of your team members.
Yes, no, totally, because it basically, it gives you structure in order to do that, and makes it very simple for you to do it as well. So Lawrence, I'd love for you to kind of share with us and everybody listening in, how do you typically add value? What are the different formats that you can actually engage with them, or for them to actually use your service, and some of the consulting thought leadership that you bring to the table?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. I would say there's a host of different ways that I add value to the clients, and I'll try to be very distinct and succinct with all of them. The first, obviously, the WINSHAW is a product, and it's subscription based. So you can actually subscribe to the WINSHAW and use it within your organization. That's one way. The second way is, as a service, the tool itself, unless you can facilitate really well and you feel comfortable being able to define criteria, weight them, facilitate a team through that whole process, I offer those services as well. And I work with clients to be able to do that. So
Okay.
I can facilitate decisions for you where I'm brought in to say, we're doing strategic planning, and Lawrence, I'd love you for you to actually walk us through that entire process. So I can engage with you that way.
Yes.
Or I actually have an opportunity where I'll come in and I'll train your own people to be expert facilitators. It's called WINSHAW certification. So you become adept at using the tool, but not only that, you become an expert facilitative leader. There's a course that I bring people through and get you certified. So that has lasting repercussions for your organization because, again, going back to the Nanny McPhee example,
exactly.
I don't have to be around to do that for you. I'm building your acumen to be able to do that. So that's on the client side. There's one last thing, Ash, that I want to mention, and that is there's also opportunities for organizations to use the WINSHAW as a service offering for their own clients. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a program that we've put together called TAP, the Trusted Affiliate Program. And essentially, I'll work with like-minded organizations that see the value of WINSHAW.
Yes.
And they see it not only just for their own organization, but they see the value in being able to use it with their clients. They use it with their clients, and it's able to reduce the sales cycle, get to decision faster, get to revenue faster, cleaner. But they also have an opportunity. So there's obviously a service offering that they can have, but they can also benefit from a commission standpoint in that if they're able to generate interest from their clients to be able to become subscribers, well, they can benefit in that way as well because they're essentially a de facto sales team.
Absolutely, like an enterprise license, or basically the number of people that would actually subscribe to the tool and use it.
That's right. That's right. So they're using it with their clients, and they're also engaging their clients and generating interest, which again can turn into customers.
Absolutely. I think these are fantastic different approaches for people to engage with the tool. And I even think sales managers can benefit from learning how to coach their sales professionals in terms of how they can continue to navigate the sales deal within organizations, particularly when it comes to be complex, high-stakes decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap things up. I would love for people listening to learn how they can engage with you and your company, Lawrence.
Well, that'd be great. I welcome everyone to reach out to me. You can reach me. The easiest thing to do would be to reach me at Maverik Consulting. Hopefully Ash will put up my contact information at the end of this podcast. Absolutely. But you can reach me at Lawrence@maverikconsulting.com. Or if you want to reach me directly, my direct business number is 404-861-4100.
Fantastic, Lawrence.
Of course, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on Facebook. Any of the social media things work as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think this was fascinating, and I hope sales professionals or even entrepreneurs can really see the value that working with you and really leveraging this methodology and process. Time to benefit, we talked about time to actually closing the deal, which any sales professional is much more interested in, and essentially time to really delivering value and putting cash in everybody's pocket. So really appreciate your time, Lawrence. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Ash. It was a pleasure joining you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Top 1% Sellers podcast. Give us your suggestions and guest recommendations by emailing us at ash@connectwithash.com. Thank you also for sharing this podcast with your colleagues and social media contacts. To connect with us on LinkedIn, please send a connect request to ash@connectwithash.com. See you at our next episode. Thanks for tuning in.